this week's episode of Be Freaking Awesome. I am one of your hosts, Sami Kinnison, here with Angela Belford, and today we are joined by Shell Mendelson, who is an ADHD career coach. And I am super excited to get to dive into this topic, just talking about how ADHD can really impact your career and when you might need to seek out a coach for that. So, Shell, thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Shell Mendelson, and I am an ADHD career coach. I help people with primarily my only work with ADHD clients. I help them find a career direction that is fulfilling, satisfying, and sustainable. So that's it in a nutshell.
So I want to clarify, because that does not mean you're an ADHD coach. You are a career coach.
Yeah.
That works with people that have ADHD. So those of you that I know, some of our podcast listeners are actually people that are coaches themselves who narrow down their focus, or maybe you're a business that feels like they can serve everyone, but it sounds like you have found exactly the group of people that you want to. So tell us about the difference between an ADHD coach and a career coach who specializes in ADHD.
Okay, perfect. Well, you kind of said it right there in a nutshell. I'm a career coach and counselor. That's what my training is. That's what my background is. I've been doing this for 35 years. I am not an executive function coach, which is typically the difference. ADHD career coaches, ADHD coaches are trained and generally certified doing a specific work to help people with all the functions that they have to deal with, accountability and breaking things down. I do that in my work kind of naturally as part of what I do, but it's all focused around the idea of career. And my background is all career.
Okay.
So
that's very
What
cool.
led you to working with people specifically with ADHD?
Well, it was after my own diagnosis very late in life, which was, I kind of came crawling to the bookshelf and grabbed the book that my friend, who was a therapist, had sent me 2 years before, that I just blatantly put in the drawer, closed the drawer, never looked at it until I had a real breakdown after doing the work that I actually was not meant to do over the long haul, which was the franchise system that I created. I did not have an exit plan for that. And so when it came to building it, it was great fun. But when it came to the day to day, I broke down and it was terrible. And I realized I was no longer doing work I enjoyed. The company was going great, but I wasn't. I was, I don't know. It felt like an albatross. I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And it was showing up in the work and my working with other people. So at that point, it did not end well for me. I was the founder and the CEO of this company, and I'd spent years working on it to get it going. But when it came down to the day to day, after a few years of just the grind of it, I really, really started to break down quite a bit. And that was when I realized there's something off here, And I just literally went crawling to the bookshelf, like I said, and I grabbed the book and I saw all the little checklists that they have. And it was my first aha moment of saying, okay, I'm not alone. And it was a relief. And as a lot of people experience the grief process, that you kind of go through and all the levels. I finally got the diagnosis. And then I said, I need to be working with people like me. This is the community I need to be working with. I truly, from a soul level, understand, and a brain wiring level, understand what people go through when they're in the wrong kind of work. I had just experienced that, and I hadn't really experienced it very much throughout my career because I was in the right career for so many years. But it wasn't until I decided I was going to go off the charts. Go ahead.
Oh, well, yes. That sounds interesting and probably really challenging to be the founder and the CEO and say, this isn't right for me
Yeah.
anymore. Like it almost feels like the stakes are higher than just I'm employed with somebody and I could go find a different
Yeah.
job. But it's like, I founded this, that those stakes are a lot higher, it seems, and I could feel like that would be a
Oh,
harder to pull the eject cord than
yeah.
just a job you don't like.
It was, well, yes, it was, because you're the owner and you have responsibility towards the franchisees and your business partners, and you're in it, right? And
Mhm.
the only way to exit is to leave not in a great way, give up something. I had to give up quite a bit to leave. And it was pretty devastating at the time. It really
Yeah.
was. It was traumatic, very traumatic, because I had spent so many years. But then when it came to realizing this was no longer what I should be doing, it was almost too late, to
Mm,
even think about a smooth exit at that point.
yeah.
So it was very rocky. It was very traumatic. And I don't recommend it for anyone. And it also gave me a lot of good fodder for what I do now to help people
Yeah.
not make these kinds of choices. It was
I
like served its purpose.
For
Yeah.
Yeah.
sure. Well, and I think that I was recently talking to someone else who's going to be working with business owners who have ADHD, and I'm like, probably that's a redundant phrase in my opinion, because
Yeah.
there are a lot of us that can't manage the corporate space. That's why I love your story, is because you're like, no, 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 I
Yeah.
did that thing. I talk about it like I'm really good at starting, I'm really good at building things, but
Yeah.
maintaining is hard on those of us with ADHD, because
Exactly.
just
Yeah.
the grind of that. So I'm really glad that you kind of talked about that. Um,
Mhm.
I'm
Angela,
very
real quick
curious, like,
though,
had you
Angela, real
oh,
quick, can
yeah.
you share a little bit of some similarities on your late in life ADHD aha moment? Can you share a little bit of that story? Because I think you also had a we're told and then kind of let it sit for 2 years. Care to share?
Mm, it wasn't 2 years. Well, it might I don't can't remember the time frame, but, I thought somebody was joking. So I had someone that was I was teaching a class for a client. Back then I was teaching a lot of Microsoft classes, Outlook, Word, Excel,
Mhm.
and what this person said, "Angela, you have ADHD." I thought she was kidding. And then some months later, I really didn't, um, I
Yeah.
was talking to a friend of mine who had a diagnosis, and he's telling me about the concept of hyperfocus. And I'm like, wait, what? I said, I'm pretty sure that hyperfocus proves that I don't have ADHD. And he goes, oh, no, no, no. That proves that you do have ADHD. He goes, have you ever been like so in the zone on what you're working on that if somebody talks to you, then you're like, what? And I went, yeah. And then I went back to the person that had been joking, because it had been a couple months. And I said, hey, but just hypothetically speaking, you were kidding, right? You were teasing me. She goes, Angela, I was a principal for 12 years, and I was the leader of the group of people that assessed children to assess that they were. No, that was a diagnosis. Everybody I worked with said, wait, you didn't know? People that were my friends were shocked by the diagnosis. They were like, but you get so much done, and you like run a business and you do all of these things. But people that worked with me on a day-to-day basis were like, how did you not know this about yourself? So it is a little bit jarring. And I was grateful that I was diagnosed. And the first book I ever read was ADHD, A Different Perspective by Tom Hartman. And he says, if you lived in Zimbabwe, you would not be labeled with a disorder. You would be a revered member of the tribe. And which I
Mhm.
think I talked about on our episode about ADHD, a superpower or a syndrome. And for me, I love it. I love having ADHD because I have lots of coping skills. I know how to work with my brain. I also love that when my daughter was a high schooler and she would like cry that she would lose stuff all the time, and she would be frustrated that she could, like, why can't I remember anything if I don't write it down? I go, honey, your brain's just different. It's not really designed for the American education system. Just hang in there. You're going to get through it. It'll be fine. You're going to do great in life as long as you pick the right job. Which brings us
That's
back
it.
to Shell. Tell us about some of the things that you do to help people kind of figure out the right job for them. Because we're all
Well,
different.
we're all different, but people come to me with a set of very similar circumstances, though, even though everybody's as different as from one person to the next. I mean, neurotypical or whatever. But the same things that I hear coming up with, they're in a job, and many people are in these PIP programs, and those PIP performance improvement programs that really don't help them improve because they're feeling crushed and they're feeling out of sorts and they're feeling pressured and all the things that kind of can take us off track. That's basically how they come to me. And many of the people that I work with have been in those programs, or some aren't even in them as we're going through it. And some people just keep saying, I have so many ideas. That's the first one. And I just don't know how to pick one. I have no idea. Younger people come out of college, they majored in something, but they hadn't gone through the kind of process I take people through. So they're like, I still don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm not prepared to do much of anything. And I went through this whole 4 years. I owe all this money. And now what am I going to do? I have no clue. So that those people, and then I work with people who've been in the executives, people literally all educational and executive levels, who are just not happy with what they're doing and pretty much always knew they weren't in the right field or doing the right kind of work. They just had a sense of it, and now they finally want to get it right and start from scratch, meaning laying the foundation, which is what very few people do, and which is what I help people do. Actually lay that foundation and build it up so that the cream rises to the top and it becomes very clear what direction they need to take. And then they have to overcome all the voices in their head telling them, I can't do this, I shouldn't do this, what about this, what about that? So we deal with all of those things because that's probably the biggest piece of what comes up. And that's what I hear people saying. They've been kind of they've been kind of drowning in those voices for years, and now it's time to get some clarity and work with a small community to just clear everything out and figure out what it is they should be doing.
I think that's great, and it sounds like the almost trying to figure out how to turn the voices from negative and discouraging into empowering. How do you see ADHD as a strength? How do you see where it is going to benefit you in different types of jobs? It is going to make a difference. Certain jobs, it's going to be a lot
Mm.
harder if you're out there wired to be a hunter and you're out having to gather. It's going to be harder. It's not going to be as easy. And so I think that's really great to try to take that negative side and that negative voice in people's head and let's overcome. Let's get to the other side of that.
Well, I like to say that people who know what they want, are clear about what they want, are very focused on what they want, and they're excited and energized by it. Those are the people that are the best in their field. They do the best jobs. They're the most productive. They're You can give them a project, they'll get it done, and they can be the leaders of those projects. And really knowing what they want is where it has to start. You've got to know, and you've got to be able to articulate it and feel confident that this is the direction that you want to take. That's where it has to start. And once people with ADHD get that, oh my gosh, the sky's the limit. The sky is literally the limit. Yeah.
I have a friend of mine who has ADHD and he's in the middle of a career transition and longtime listener. So shout out, you know who you are. And recently I've been trying to give him some ideas and was able to give him a referral to get paid to do something that he does all the time for free. And after I just talked to him a couple days ago, and after he did this for me. He said, "Hey, I got this text from our mutual friend, and he asked me if I had any private clients yet." And I told him about what I was doing for your referral. And he goes, "Oh, I have some work like that." And I go, "This is how it works. You do the thing you love to do, and you find people to get to pay you." And he's like, "This doesn't feel like work, though. I can't believe somebody's willing to pay me," which
Yeah.
that clarity to me that you're talking about, which I would imagine if I've been mired in those voices and suddenly I just see it as like somebody coming out of like a dark cave for a while, and now suddenly like the path is so obvious. The just relief of knowing,
Mhm.
because you're not proposing to people that they, when they come to you, it's fine that you're dark in the cave, that you don't have
Mhm.
any idea, that you don't have to and have any idea of what you want when people come to you, right? Because you've actually developed a
Right.
really neat process, and it's
Yeah.
based on some historical. Tell us about the it's a resource that those of us of a certain age will recognize. So tell us a little bit about that and maybe how yours connects to that kind of cool long-term resource that's available.
Well, after I worked in the field of vocational rehabilitation and then I worked with individuals in straight up career counseling, I was then trained by Richard Bowles, who wrote What Color Is Your Parachute? He was the person who trained me. Okay. So that was the method I've used that process.
And
Uh,
what was the process exact? What color? Those that are of a younger age, maybe not
a
know
Like,
what
younger
I don't
what color
age.
was your
know.
parents. She doesn't
That's
know.
me. I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Well, the process is breaking breaking down your must-haves or your preferences into different categories that across the board make up your ideal work. So, such as what are the skills you prefer to use, and what are the types of people you want to work with, the characteristics of those people, and the behaviors that you want to see from those people, people you want to work with and for. What are the working conditions? And that's a big piece of it. And parachute, for me, I mean, I'm going through all I still go through this process with people, but I've refined it and shifted and changed it a lot for people with ADHD, which I found was absolutely necessary to do over the past 15 years. So we'll talk about the course slash workbook that I have, where I've put all that together. But that's what I do. I break it down into the third one is working conditions. Then special knowledges, fields of interest. I call it the tree trunk, which is the foundation. So I know that there I use the image of a tree trunk, and the bottom part is the foundation. So we can talk about that if you want. But the next part is salary and rewards, location, geographical location, and then we end up with all this information. What's my purpose? Life purpose. So that comes out of this work that they do. That's all about them. It's all about what they want. So we're talking about having to, where the voices come in are telling you, if you want to get a job, you've got to be able to do da 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 da. But you have to really let those go so that you can just really focus on what it is that you want, no matter how, uh, no matter even if it's a rock star. It doesn't matter. You have to really get out, be willing to say what it is. And so that helps you to really get clarity about how you can bring some of those elements into your work, right? So it's not literal. It's not always literal, but knowing what your preferences are, your must-haves, and what are the skills I want. And very often when we start with that part of it, people will, I mean, I'll just say that one thing about the first part of it. People often, when they get their top skills, after going through a prioritizing process and writing stories and doing a few things that help them kind of get to that point, that they realize I haven't been using any of these skills in my work. Oh my gosh, I'm in this job and no wonder I'm miserable. The real me, if I'm able to use these skills, will thrive. And so that's what I need to I need to let go of this thing of having to work in this environment, doing these kinds of things where I'm not honoring who I am.
Do
and what
you
really
think
makes me happy.
do you think that or is in your experience, the clients that you work with, does it take bravery and courage to sort of say what they want? Or is it once they get through the process, it's not actually not that courageous because it's just right there? And either one, I'm really not
Both.
sure. Yeah.
At the beginning, it's scary. In the beginning, it's scary. And a lot of times people are like, why am I doing this? Where is this going? Blah, blah. And what I was talking about, the voices, we call it the safekeeping self, the part that just keeps you in status quo position. If you're not able to really look at everything that you've ever thought about before in your life of doing, that you put on the back burner, if you're not willing to do that, you're what I call rigging the system. And you'll not answer authentically. It has to be, because people with ADHD, we want to go back, we want to please, we want to do, somebody tells us to do something, we'll do it, right? But the thing is, it's not sustainable. You can get a job where you're not honoring that stuff, but eventually it's going to break down. Eventually it's not going to work. It may take years for some people, or it may be like within 6 months they realize it. But at some point it's going to break down if you're not able to sort of honor who you are and have some of those elements in the work that you do, because that's what makes the work great. That's what is such a win-win for both employer, employee, for everybody, really. When people are thriving and they're enjoying the work, they're energized by it, and they want to do more of it, and they're very clear about it. That's the thing, the clarity part.
So I am curious. You said it's not it may not be literal. And I want to go back to that because when you say it may not be literal, what comes to
Yeah.
mind, and I want you to clarify for me, is if I have a deep, deep need to help people, and then I'm in a role, and maybe the role, it's not obvious that I help people, but I realize, oh, wait, actually in this way, I'm training other adults, or maybe if is it like when you say it's not literal, it may not be literal, and I'm thinking about your life purpose, is it like reframing some things to realize, like, oh, wait, you actually like decision making? Like, I just wanted to unpack that because I want to make sure I understand what you mean by it might not be literal. And
I
that
think it's a number, right? I think it's a number of those things. Like it can be literal in the sense that I'm a leader. I like, leadership. Using leadership skills are really important. I'm a creator, so using creativity in my work is really important. I'm a problem solver, so using problem solving skills in my work is really important. And I'm talking about, these are the ones that most people come up that I hear more often
right.
than anything.
Sure.
I like to systematize. I really like to break things down. That's another one that comes up a lot. Um, I like to research. A lot of people with ADHD love to research, right? So I'm talking about when these skills come up at the top in terms of when they prioritize what's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
They really have to be front and not just, they need to be defined in a way that's personal to that person. And with ADHD, you can have elements of it, but if the bigger part of your job is not satisfying you in the other areas, and it can overshadow some of that. So knowing the whole picture makes it easier to start moving in the right direction. You've got to have the whole picture.
I have a
Yeah.
question, because I'm like, but why do you think that only ADHD people have to have satisfaction? What is it that
Everybody
makes
does.
it?
No, okay, I'll tell you the difference.
Yeah, tell me.
So people with ADHD, if they don't have like a sustainable interest in what they're doing, if they're not energized, and you know this, I mean,
I know it, but I want you to
you
spell it
know
out.
this. Yeah, I'm spelling it out for you. If you don't, then at some point it will break down, and you will start making mistakes. You will start having issues with other people, your team people, other people in your company, if you're working in a company versus working on your own. it just starts to come out in different ways. You make errors like that you don't even realize you're making. You miss appointments, you miss deadlines, you do all these things start to pop up over time, and they become very clear. And then this is when people get called on the carpet, right? And this is where we're going to put you on a PIP program. And usually those are the jobs that people should be out of the second they hear that, because I won't even go into it. I'm going to start really talking a lot about those programs and how I want to, dare I say the word, disrupt them a little bit in a good way.
Yeah.
In a
I
good
have a
way.
question. So on that, what if I'm an employer or a manager or something, and I have team members that do need to improve, that there's areas where it's not working? A performance improvement plan may not be the right solution, but what would be a good way particularly if I'm listening to the podcast right now and I have people on my team who have ADHD, what advice would you give for them on how to give feedback and how to grow in specific areas that maybe is not the same as a performance improvement plan?
Well, I think, and I don't know if employers want to hear, always I feel like I'm walking this line. Like I don't want to piss employers off, right? But employers do need to know that if a person with ADHD is not ultimately satisfied with what they're doing, the performance improvement plan is not going to do that's not going to work. So going to use something like the course book, have them go through that to start to identify their preferences, and then talk about how can we, slowly, incrementally, even proportionally work some of that into what I'm doing, and have that conversation with them. But they're much clearer at that point. You see what I'm saying? And when they're clear, they can articulate to you, the employer, here's what, under these conditions, and I would like to be able to do more of this. Would you please give me more of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that? So you can do a little bit of negotiating, and if they want to stay in that position, or maybe there's something lateral that would fit them better.
Yeah.
I have employers send their employees to me for just that reason, because they value their employees and they want them to be able to find a place. They want to keep them. But on the other hand, if there isn't a place for them and they're not ultimately going to be satisfied, and then they're going to make mistakes and do all that stuff, maybe the best thing is for them to not be there, which saves everybody a lot of time and money and, trying to fix everything.
So back in the 90s, Jim Collins did the book Good to Great, and he talked about people getting the right people on the bus and getting the right people in the seat, which I think is how I've gotten we've had good success of hiring people. And I would say we're probably like 80% of our staff is ADHD. We do have 20% maintainers that they do that, but so it's interesting that you talk about that. And we've alluded to the book. So let's go ahead and jump in, because I didn't think about employers using this as a way to help their employees. So I was only thinking of it in terms of, I'm looking for a new job. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, those kinds of things. But you're saying that this book could actually be a great resource for
It should be in every HR. It should be in every HR department. And by the way, just a little hint, my next thing is I'm working with a DEI specialist, who's works with the neurodiverse population, who's brilliant. Oh my gosh, brilliant. And we're going to be working on how to introduce the concept basically within the corporate world.
That's really cool.
We're working on it. We're going to be putting together like a workbook that they can use, or something like a little manual kind of thing to get started. And then, of course, this book would be helpful to just have, maybe you have a couple of employees that are going through this book. They go through it together. They set weekly appointments to get the assignments done. They read their stories to each other. They do, it's really much better when you're working with somebody else. It's not as easy accountability wise for our brains,
Yeah.
to be doing this stuff.
Well, and for
So,
me, when I was my time of corporate, I feel like a little bit of this I came about in a much harder way, and but I would still ask for those questions about these are the kinds of projects I really enjoy doing. I would love to do more of that. So when I was nowhere near an event planning job, I planned multiple team building retreats and helped organize
mhm.
who are the speakers. I put on a talk, I helped do all of those things. And they're like, "Don't you just
Yeah.
write grant letters for your job?" And I was like, "I do. I do write grant letters for the bulk of my job, and I get to do this special project where I plan our team retreats, which now that is actually in a looking back was a really neat little light bulb moment to see that was the part of my job I loved. And if you pay attention or if you know anything about what the Belford group has been up to these days, it's one of our newest service offerings is that I go and help you plan your retreats, plan your workshops, build your employees, because that's something that I have loved for a while.
So did they create that for you? Did
I
you
did
create
plan the
that?
I did plan the very
Yeah.
first team retreat for our team. They had not had one
Mm-hmm.
before, and there was other teams had done
Yeah.
them. And so they're like, I was working with accountants and legal people, and everyone was like, "Oh gosh, this sounds so like a lot to plan a whole like workshop and retreat. I don't know how we're going to do that. We definitely won't have the budget." And I was like, "I can help. I have skills. I would love to be doing that." I sort of had stumbled into this job in the legal department with all these accounting folks and lawyers and different things like that. I was the oddball and got to
Mm-hmm.
be the people person and event planner because I had those skills, which was really neat. So part of it was me raising my hand and not being afraid to put my name in the hat, even though I was the most junior member of the team. And it really was nice.
So that's where you realize what you enjoy doing the most, and you're
Mm-hmm.
getting to do more of it, and that's the whole
Exactly.
point. This is
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is the and you're probably a rock star at it, right? You're probably like you're the
Yeah.
go-to person. And
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot. This seems like the retreat thing seems to be big with people
Mm-hmm.
that I work with. I just had a guy in one of my master classes who does adventure, wants to be doing more adventure retreats, adventure tours, and we were having a field day coming up with different topics and
I
ways that
love
this could be
that.
marketed. And I said, and he does it, he's been doing it for free. And I said, well, get all those people to write you a testimonial
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
of, and ask all of them what they would pay if you were not their friend giving it to them for free. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then create your website. And, I mean, he's so excited he's been doing this stuff, which is the idea of what we're supposed to be doing out there really doesn't come as a big shock to anybody, because a lot of times they've been thinking about this stuff for a long time, but they were, for whatever reason, got off track, had all this input from the outside, felt that they had to do things a certain way, had families, they thought, I've got to support a family, blah, 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 all the reasons why people don't do it. And yet all this stuff has been in the background, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
now they get to kind of unleash that, go back to, we have a childhood activities exercise that's in the book that takes you back and sort of helps you rebuild where your heart really wants to go. And when I say it's not literal or linear always, it means that you can take elements of things that are really cool for you to do and add it to the work you do that may be a little bit more structured in some way, but you can add it to it just to get started like you did. You were the first one
Mm-hmm.
to do the retreat. That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ask your boss if you can do a retreat because you've got the big picture thing. You've got the brain, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
assume
and
are you neurodiverse?
Yes.
yeah, she
Or
is.
you're both
ADHD.
ADHD, right?
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have that big picture thinking. So you see the whole thing laid out before you even get started, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm formally
Yeah.
like I haven't gotten an official diagnosis, but having been raised by somebody with ADHD and all this stuff, I am 100%. Just
Oh wait, talk about your husband and you and how you kind
oh,
of
we were, scrolling TikTok and Instagram reels as one does, and ended up getting a lot of things that were talking about like ADHD traits. And I would show it to him and I'd be like, that's not an ADHD trait. That's just a normal brain trait. I don't know what you're talking about. And then he would respond and say, yeah, that's just a normal brain. I don't know why people are saying that's an ADHD thing. And we figured out that the two of us are a bad control group for these questions because both of us have ADHD tendencies. And so I asked another friend at one point in time, and she was like, I don't know what you're talking about. My brain does not do that at all. I was like, oh, okay, great. Well, there's the super validation.
That's the ticker
right there. So
what are you talking about?
Oh man, it was so funny.
I unfortunately am like the kind a little bit. I've had a couple of people recently, and they're like, "I might have ADHD," and I'll be like, "Oh, I didn't know you didn't know," because I resonate with them so well, that anyway. And the challenge is that getting the actual diagnosis is pretty costly, especially if you're in career transition. It can be costly, and it is also it's a little intimidating because I had a friend that he sent me an email and was like, I need someone else to fill out this assessment to help me be diagnosed. And I was like, that's funny.
That's not going to work.
This is the kettle calling the pot black. But yeah, I mean, anyway, so it was just, and so it was fun to walk with him through the, like how the assessment goes and different things. So anyway, I think there's some barriers and some challenges when we're older to those late diagnoses, because even the process is painful sometimes. That's what I loved about your book, is that this may sound overwhelming to people, but you do things like these very cool little graphics that are just very fun. And it feels like I'm back in elementary school doing such cool little, I mean, very cool little worksheets and stuff like that are not overwhelming. And you have one of the things that I was intrigued by. You said that we need to make a smile file. And so tell us just a little bit, in case that way people have at least one thing they can take away from them. Tell us about what the smile file is and why is that important?
Well, the smile file was something that came, as just, how you get these ideas? We get these, I call them downloads. The download, it just came to me one day, smile file. I just want to take pictures of stuff that make me smile. I just want to put stuff in a file, some kind of a container, and you can make, if you're artsy, you can make it a fun container, or you could put it on in a picture document if you want, on your phone or on the computer or whatever. And just whatever makes you smile, literally, even if it's like a testimonial somebody gave you, or a letter of recommendation of some kind that somebody gave you and wrote it and it made you smile. It doesn't have to be pictures all the time. Pictures make it easy. I've had people do like amazing collages of, smile collages kind of. But what it does is you start to see a pattern after a while. So I look for things in creating this book. It's all about patterns. It's all about repetition of information that you see over and over that you can't deny anymore. That, when you're taking pictures of even cool stuff when you're out and about, at some point you're going to start to say, this keeps coming up. What is it? And when you put all that information together with all the other pieces that, and I call them clues, from having done the activities in the book, and doing the prioritizing and doing the career galaxy that you showed everybody, that is going to give you, you're going to see the cream rising to the top. You're going to see, it's going to become evident. It's more organic. It's more like really coming from who you are. It's not the outside world influencing you. It's really coming from you. That's where it has to start. And actually, that's true for everyone. It's not just for people with ADHD, but it's particularly true for us. You had asked me before the difference between neurotypical people coming for career, and I used to work with for 20 years with everybody. So I'm sure a lot of people had a variety of diagnoses. By the way, neurotypical people have anxiety and they have depression. They have all kinds of other things going on. So it's not, you call it neurotypical in the way our brains are wired, but there are other issues that they have to deal with as well.
For sure.
But yeah, the difference being that a person, not most, but many people who are neurotypical can last in a job that they probably should not be in far longer, because they can focus on doing the tasks without being distracted. They can continue to just do the grind day in, day out. And my cousin died, it was 11 years ago now. And he was like my brother. He and I were really, really close. And our careers really followed each other from the time we were just in college and grad school and everything. We went to the same programs. We became teachers, we became folk rehab counselors. He ended up working for a city where he was the only person doing his job. And he walked into a war zone every day. He was very neurotypical. In no way was this guy ADHD. Very neurotypical. And he ended up taking all kinds of medications and having all kinds of stomach problems. But he insisted on staying there until he retired. You know, you've heard of people who stay in their jobs till they retire and then they die. That was him. So 2 years later, he the healthiest person. If you were to see him physically, he's one of the healthiest people you would ever. How does he? I mean, the muscles that he worked out all the time. 2 years later, he died of pancreatic cancer from issues that had developed while he was in this soul crushing position for years. And I had begged him to get out. So now he is my cautionary tale that I tell people that this is if you stay in this position, and I know you think the carrot is at the end of the road, is it worth your life?
Wow.
Is it worth your life?
I think that comment though about is it worth your life? I think that's just a really good place for us to kind of land the plane and wrap up, and knowing that one, there's hope that it doesn't have to be this way. If you're feeling in a spot where you're feeling the dread and the just grind, as we've been saying, and grind in not a good way, there is hope. You don't have to go it alone. And you're also not alone. Like, you're not the only person who has experienced this. There are other people who have gone before you, particularly people like Shell, who want to reach back and help you move forward in your career journey.
Beautiful.
Shell, where can people find you, connect with you, find your book? Where, if I'm inspired, I want to go, how do I get you in touch with you?
I offer the 8-week Your Next Career Move Masterclass, which we use. This is the course book that we use. We go through everything, but it's more intensive. Passion2career.com or Career Coaching with Shell, whichever one you resonate with. They're both the same. And then the course book you can get on Amazon and on my website. So
okay, perfect. Thank you so much. We'll make sure to include all of those links in the notes for the episode so that you guys can connect with Shell and learn more. Even just following along on the journey, seeing resources available. It is so exciting to have you here. I so appreciate the work you're doing and just getting to share a little bit of advice and wisdom along the way with us. For now, we hope you guys go and be freaking awesome.